Why awakening, spiritual awakening, can and will oftentimes destroy your old life. That is because when you reach spiritual awakening, which is a remembrance of who you are, you basically remember that you are everything and everyone because you remember and you know for a fact that you are the higher self, source, God, call it whatever you want, that chose to incarnate itself within each and every one of us on this 3D material world in order for it, source, to experience itself. And when you remember who you are, it is oftentimes, if not every single time, at least it was for me and for the people that I know who are awakened, that I know for a fact that they are awakened, it shattered every belief system that I had. It shattered every single certainties that I had. And it made me see everything and everyone differently. Meaning that I was not a prey to all the deceit that I could have experienced or be the target of in my life prior to my spiritual awakening. And so when you start seeing everything differently, when you think differently, when you know that everything you are experiencing in this physical world of ours is nothing more than a dream, God's dream, if you will, when you know that every single limitation that you imposed on yourself because of this or that belief, because of the way you were brought up, because of the religion you grew up in, etc., so on and so forth, when you start to realize that all those limitations are not real, that there are virtually no limitations aside from the physical laws that rule this 3D world of ours, for instance, gravity, for instance, the law of duality, things like that. When you understand that aside from those laws, everything else is basically a clean slate for you to write on whatever you want, to make your life whatever you want it to be. When you understand that, it is, I think, an impossibility to keep living the way you were living before your spiritual awakening. The people that you used to talk to or socialize with before your spiritual awakening, after a spiritual awakening, will come across as disaligned. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that they are bad people and you are so much better than them. That is absolutely not the truth. Everybody is on their own way towards spiritual awakening, whether they realize it or not. And there are as many different ways to reach spiritual awakening as there are people incarnated in this world. So to say that people are beneath you or inferior to you is, well, first of all, not very spiritual, but it means that you are completely listening to your ego that is trying to derail your spiritual journey. And every single time you listen to your ego, you are not doing what's best for you. That doesn't take away the fact that after a spiritual awakening, which allows you to see this world for what it really is, which allows you to see people for who they really are, that is yourself, because we are one. We are each and every one of us. We are one. We are the higher self. We are God. We are source. But the people who haven't reached a certain kind of spiritual development or spiritual awakening are still led on by their ego. And when you reach spiritual awakening, or you are further along the spiritual path, almost there being spiritual awakening, the people who are completely enthralled, who are slaves to their ego, will lose their attraction to you. They will lose their glamour, if you will, because you will see them as actors. And the director is the ego. And you do not have any time, or dare I say, patience to give to actors. And that doesn't make you better. Again, I really want to emphasize that point. It doesn't make you a better person if after spiritual awakening, you do not choose to entertain the friendships that you used to entertain before spiritual awakening. The relationships, romantic, platonic, even people in your own biological family, adoptive family, whatever the case may be. It doesn't make you better than them. It just means that these people all of a sudden, these people who are still in, pretty deep in their own ego, these people are not aligned with you because you managed to free yourself from the shackle of the ego and use the ego for what it is, a tool to navigate this beautiful 3D material world of ours. But made a point that never will your ego be your own master. So when you fundamentally change yourself, the way you see things, the way you know things, it is impossible to stay around people who, for the moment, it can change in the future, but for the moment do not understand you. I often say that even if you live to be 100 years old, this life, this incarnation, present incarnation, is very short. And it behooves you to do everything and anything you can to make this incarnation the best life you can ever possibly make for yourself. And it goes without saying, but I will say it anyway, it goes without saying that anyone that is disaligned with you will not be of any spiritual use for you. If they do not choose to better themselves, if they do not choose to stop listening to their ego, then the only thing you can do is put some distance between them and you and lead by example. Lead by example meaning that after spiritual awakening, your life becomes a paradise. Your life becomes the dream that it is supposed to be. And keep in mind that it is only a dream. But it is now up to you, after spiritual awakening, to make it a beautiful dream. You will automatically, when you embrace that, you will automatically create a beautiful life. And what I meant to say by leading by example, people will see that. So maybe people with whom you are not aligned with at first, after you put some distance between you and them, will start noticing that your life is pretty phenomenal. And if their ego's voice is not too loud, they might disregard it for a minute and be interested in how come your life is so good all of a sudden. And that might be, hopefully will be, their first step on a spiritual journey. Because you will have, without trying to convince them of anything, led by example. And the example that you gave off to the people, to the world, will come across as so beautiful and attractive that some of them will try to emulate it. Again, that will be their first step on a spiritual journey. To get back to you yourself and you, after a spiritual awakening, you now understand why it is impossible to keep the people you considered your friends before spiritual awakening after you had one. It is impossible because the people that you surrounded yourself before your spiritual awakening were the people who corresponded to the mask and the costume that your own ego made you wear. But reaching spiritual awakening is a shedding of the mask and the costume. Therefore, and it will oftentimes happen, at least happen to me, after a spiritual awakening, the people that you used to interact with will not recognize you. They will say, you changed. And in their eyes, in their mind, not necessarily for the better, right? Because they were attracted to the mask and the costume that your own ego made you wear. But when you remove the mask, you remove the costume, and you show off the real you to the world, well, the people who were used to your ego's deception will be shocked. And oftentimes they will not like what they see. Because the reason why they were attracted to your ego's mask and ego's costumes that you are wearing is because their own ego liked it. You know? Egos recognize themselves. People's egos recognize each other. They like to pat each other on the back, right? When their slave, aka the person to whom the ego belongs, is doing exactly what the ego wants them to do. So when you reach spiritual awakening and you shed yourself from those ego's costumes and masks, and you stop believing the ego's lies, you know, that there is death, that you are your body, that you are your job, that all those things that the ego tells you in order for you never to reach spiritual awakening. When you rid yourself of that and you throw those away and put the ego back in its place, that is the tool that it is supposed to be and nothing but a tool, then you cannot stay around people who do not understand that, and that is okay. Oftentimes you cannot keep doing the job you used to do, and so you will quit. Oftentimes you cannot stand the place where you are, and so you will move places. Oftentimes you cannot stand the objects that you're surrounded yourself with, and you will sell them all, or you will throw them away. Because the things, the object, the clothes, the everything that corresponded to the person that you were or thought you were when you were led on by your ego, after a spiritual awakening, they are not you anymore. And it's, you know, not unheard of that after a spiritual awakening, people become minimalists. You know, they get rid of everything. I don't think I am a minimalist, but I did get rid of a lot of stuff. A lot of shit. Clothes, books, furniture, whatever. Got rid of a lot of stuff. Because it did not correspond to who I remember I was. That is, one and every one of us. The higher self, source, God, call it whatever you want. So don't be alarmed. Don't be afraid. When you are further down the spiritual path, or if you reach spiritual awakening, that your old world will crumble. But it is only crumbling for a new world, a better world, a beautiful world, a dreamlike world to take its place. So keep going on your spiritual awakening. It is always, always worth it.